Welcome everyone. I'm Sophie Scott, the National Medical Reporter for ABC, and today we're here to talk about an important initiative that affects everybody. The Royal Australasian College of Physicians is coordinating a global initiative to raise awareness of the health impacts of climate change. And the aim of this initiative is to unite the global medical community in calling on world leaders to commit to real action on climate change in the upcoming COP21 Climate Summit in Paris. And this morning, we're lucky enough to have a conversation with Dr. Richard Horton, Editor-in-Chief of The Lancet. And Dr. Horton will talk to us about the Planetary Health Report of the Lancet Commission. And as you'll hear, it's the first comprehensive examination of evidence showing how the health and well-being of future generations will be affected by climate change. And one thing we've been speaking about even this morning is why should doctors take action on this issue? And as Linda Selby recently wrote in the Medical Journal of Australia, the links between climate change and health are clear. The increase in extreme weather events such as floods, bushfires and heat waves are already taking their toll. And as temperatures rise, disruption to agriculture, increased water insecurity and sea level rises will adversely affect our health. And as she wrote, doctors are uniquely placed to play an important role on this issue as they have in the past on other public health issues. So before I introduce our first speakers, if you'd like to tweet about this event, which I hope that you do, the hashtag is Doctors DRS for Climate Action, and you can follow the college on RACP, and my Twitter handle is Sophie Scott and the number 2. The neuroscientist Professor Sophie Scott stole Sophie Scott, so she was a very early adopter. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce the President, Professor Nick Talley, of the President of the College, to talk about today's initiative. Please welcome Nick.
So thank you, Sophie, and thank you everyone for coming. So ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, fellows and members of the college, first of all I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we meet today, and I pay my respect to elders past and present. Look, I'm very proud on behalf of the Royal Australasian College of Physicians to thank you all for coming, to thank our special guests, Professors Anthony Capon and also Dr. Richard Horton, who I'll introduce formally in a few minutes, for being here today, and all of you for making time to be with us both here in Sydney and across Australasia. It's really terrific to be able to launch this initiative with all of you, and I hope you'll enjoy the morning, and I also hope this will be memorable, because I think we're making history. I really, really do. So basically the Royal Australasian College of Physicians is committing to leading the way on behalf of the global health and medical community in calling for meaningful action on the health impacts of climate change. We've made this commitment in line with a commitment to evidence-based advocacy, and I repeat, evidence-based. This is not something where we have an opinion. This is based on solid facts, more and more solid facts we all need to understand, facts we need to communicate, and as doctors, facts that will, if we do speak about, will be listened to. I have no doubt, and I'm sure all of you feel the same, I have no doubt climate change is a real health issue. The latest report of the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission on Planetary Health follows on in this series from the Lancet Report on Health and Climate Change released earlier this year. Both reports really drive home this central message that climate change is squarely within the mandate of the medical and health professions. And if we don't step up, who is going to do so? And I have no doubt if we don't do something, if we don't advocate, unchecked, climate change will have devastating effects on all of us, significant health impacts, significant impacts on our children, our grandchildren, everybody we know. And here in Australia, I would argue we can relate this to local events, Australia and New Zealand. For example, more bushfires, more deaths, heat waves, and we know heat waves are going to increase, and already we're seeing, in my view anyway, evidence that the climate here is warming up, as we've certainly had even most recently significant temperatures that are above and beyond what we might expect to occur. And yes, things can occur by chance, except when they keep occurring and occurring and occurring, it doesn't look like chance anymore, does it? And what's more, you know, climate change will affect our children, the elderly, those with chronic disease, coronary artery disease, respiratory disease, exhaustion, heat stroke, renal failure, other issues. They're going to become more prominent here at home as well as around the world if things don't change. And we have a responsibility as physicians, as people who care for the health of others, a responsibility to make it known what we believe will happen, to make it known that we can make a difference, to make it known that there are opportunities for health gains if we do so. And I think that's so critical overall. Calls for protecting our health will galvanise, I believe, the college believes, political support, and we want to re-galvanise political support for these issues in Australia and New Zealand. And we want to motivate not just politicians, but ourselves, our families, our colleagues, our patients, our community, for individual behaviour change. Because it's time we stepped up as individuals and not just let others do things for us. It's called personal responsibility, and I think as physicians, as doctors, as health professionals, we can advocate for this and advocate effectively. And our central message of the campaign is climate change harms health. Your health, our health, everyone's health. And we're bringing health organisations, and we've already brought health organisations and individual doctors from around the world together to campaign for meaningful action on climate change at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP21, in Paris this December. And as part of this campaign, more than 50 health and medical organisations already, and we're hoping for more, from across the globe have signed up to the global consensus statement prepared by the college. Your college, our college, leading this. And I think that's marvellous for us, but more importantly, this is so important for all of us, and that's why the college has stepped up. The consensus statement highlights that the health impacts of climate change can't be ignored, and global leaders at COP21 must make commitments to meaningful change all over the world. And look, to have medical organisations from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East, from Europe, from the Pacific, from Australasia, from the Americas, signing up to the consensus statement in and of itself is remarkable. I can't think of another example quite like it. Perhaps there are some, but I can't think of any. So that, I believe, is a marvellous outcome, and I want to really thank the Climate Change Committee of the college, the fellows of the college who've driven this, the fellows. Congratulations. Absolutely marvellous. And then I want to thank the staff who've supported them so ably, because without any of them, I wouldn't be here talking about this today. We wouldn't be discussing it today. This is not about a single person's initiative, but about the college's initiative, driven by the college, driven by those in this great college. So the campaign will encourage all of us to advocate. We're advocating for our community and our children. This will make, in my view, our profession's voice stronger and more meaningful. And I believe that's important for the advocacy for the best health of the community in general, and that's why it's so important. And we'll also be encouraging all of us, doctors and everyone, to reduce our own carbon footprint. In May, the college made headlines by announcing that we would divest from all investments directly and materially linked to fossil fuels. That did cause headlines. And I'm very impressed again that your college, the college, made this decision ahead of many others, most others around the world of similar organisations, and we hope everyone will follow. And the college is also committed in-house with our Green Sustainability Working Group. Yes, we have one, looking for ways to reduce the college's carbon footprint. So we're serious about this issue. This is not a small issue for us. This is a big issue because we know how important it is. We're serious about ensuring the international voice of the medical profession is heard at COP21, and we hope with everyone's hard work and commitment that will happen. So it's a great pleasure to host the Australasian launch of the Planetary Health Report and join with the great advocates here who will launch this campaign, our digital campaign, Doctors for Climate Action. Thank you. Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce our two special guests today because it's really marvellous to have them both here. The first is Dr. Richard Horton, who's the Editor-in-Chief of The Lancet, an important publication, not as important as some others, but a very important publication. So Dr. Horton joined The Lancet in 1990. He was the first president of the World Association of Medical Editors, and he's a past president of the US Council of Science Editors. He's an honorary professor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine at UCL, and also at the University of Oslo. And he's received numerous awards throughout his career, is extremely well known, and is someone who has been a champion in this area of climate change and health. And we're very, very pleased, Richard, to have you here. Thank you. And he'll be up in a moment to talk to you. And then we also have Professor Anthony Capon, who directs the Global Health Institute at the United Nations University. And he's a public health physician, a member of this college, an authority on environmental health, whose research is focused on urbanisation, sustainability development, and human health. And he's a co-author of the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission on Planetary Health Report we're launching today, Safeguarding Human Health in the Anthropocene Epoch. And Anthony, I'll get you up to show the video, and welcome also. Thank you again.
Thanks very much. Well, thanks very much, Nick. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be back here with you in Sydney, as Nick says, in my college, launching these important initiatives. Now, as Nick finished his opening remarks, he mentioned the word Anthropocene, and many of you may not have heard of that word, and so we'd like to kick off proceedings this morning by showing a 3-minute video that outlines what's meant by the concept of the Anthropocene. And this video was shown at the opening of the UN's Rio +20 conference back in 2012. So let's watch that 3 minutes.
This is the story of how one species changed a planet. The latest chapter of our story begins in England 250 years ago. Fueled by coal, then oil, several brilliant inventions appeared. They ignited the Industrial Revolution, which spread like wildfire through Europe, North America, Japan, then elsewhere. The great railways, then cars and highways, connected people across the globe. Medical discoveries saved millions of lives. New artificial fertilizers meant we could feed more people. Population rose rapidly. But this was nothing compared with what was to come. The 1950s marked the beginning of the Great Acceleration. Globalization, marketing, tourism, and huge investments helped fuel enormous growth. People swarmed to cities, which became even more powerful engines of creativity. In a city, which became even more powerful engines of creativity. In a single...
I think, in the interest of time, I think it might be best if we just keep going at this point and pass over to Richard. And then if we can get the technology happening, then we might come back to it after Richard's given his remarks.
Okay.
So,
okay. I'll try not to stop in the middle of my talk. if I do that, there's a human problem as well. Well, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to join you at this extremely important occasion for not only the college, but as Nick rightly said, the commitment of health professionals worldwide to this very, very important objective. Nick was very modest in saying, in paying tribute to all the people who've contributed to today, but I want to pay particular thanks to Nick. Changes in society depend upon leadership, and leadership is often very hard to find. It's often very hard to find in medicine. And so when you have a president of the college who puts the moral authority of his own professional work and that of the college behind a program of activities such as this, we should salute it, we should certainly acknowledge it, and we should work together to make it a great success. So I want to thank Nick for his leadership today. Thank you, Nick. Now, Nick comes in a long line of great Australians, and I want to mention one here. Now, of course, I'm going to have to figure out how I get my slides up. So, yeah, thanks so much. No, that's great. No problem. We're good. We're good. There we go. There we go. So we just go to. So that's There we go. So you know this man, Tony McMichael, a great Australian who really has done some of the most seminal work that has led us to this particular moment, bringing the evidence base around health and climate change to bear on a very important global political process. As recently as 2009, Tony wrote in The Lancet, "Have we yet understood the profound significance of the connection between climate change and human health?" And just that 6 years or so ago, the answer to that question was no, we really hadn't. And the work that's taken place in that very short space of time is what I want to talk about today. But I want to begin by setting this scene for the Rockefeller-Lancet Commission on Planetary Health that is the reason for us joining hands together. Because we meet at a moment of extraordinary opportunity. Sometimes the way issues around climate change are presented, it's all doom and gloom, our species will die out by 2100, we have no future, we might as well go and enjoy ourselves for the last few remaining decades of our time on this planet. I want to disabuse you of that prospect and say that actually there's something very exciting that we can achieve together. And it occurs on a background of extraordinary success. As the film was about to tell you, the human footprint on the planet has been very deleterious. But look at the extraordinary power of our species and what we have been able to achieve. So this figure from the Global Burden of Disease from 1990 to 2013 shows years of life lost, and all different colours represent the different causes of years of life lost. And the simple message of this is the trajectory of health and well-being on the planet is going in a very positive direction. That thanks to the power of science, the concerted effort of health professionals worldwide, and the commitment of governments to health, we are seeing dramatic improvements in life expectancy and well-being for many, many millions, indeed billions of people across the world. Indeed, look at what the pace of change is. This is taken from another commission The Lancet did, which I want to just say a little word about, on investing in health, Global Health 2035. So on the left, you see the number of people living in poverty, low-income populations in 1990, a generation ago, over 3 billion people. And on the right, in 2011, that segment had shrunk to below 1 billion. And in fact, it's even better than that. You see that says 11.7%. This week, the World Bank announced that there are fewer than 10% of the world's population are now living in extreme poverty. Within one generation, we've gone from almost 60% of the world's population living in extreme poverty to less than 10%. That is something we as a species should be remarkably proud of. It's telling us something very important about the positive power of what we can achieve. Now, those data came from Global Health 2035, and the title of that was A World Converging Within a Generation. What did we mean by a world converging? We meant that within that generation, it is possible, with the knowledge we have today, to eliminate preventable mortality. Preventable mortality from causes of death for mothers, for children, from infectious diseases. And it means that these are curves for under 5 mortality. It means that when you look at mortality, the pink line, in high mortality, high burden countries, within that generation we can see those lines converging with countries such as Australia. That's the prize that we have to seize. And the means for doing that, a very important instrument for doing that, lies within our grasp as health professionals. Universal health coverage. The ability to cover the entire population with a package of services and protect them from financial risk. And universal health coverage, as you know, is now a central objective of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now that's the positive story. That's, as I say, the prize. And please keep that in mind with everything I'm about to say now. Martin Rees, writing a decade ago, and it's a message he continues to promulgate, says that I think the odds are no better than 50-50 that our present civilization will survive till the end of the present century. Now, Martin Rees isn't a maverick. He is the former president of the Royal Society in the United Kingdom. He's still the Astronomer Royal, a great advocate for the role of science in society. But even Martin Rees says that we have a particular predicament that we have to address over the course of this century. Now, you could say, surely that's an exaggeration. But let's just look at a couple of isolated episodes in recent history to see that the ability of our species to address complex problems is challenging us seemingly beyond our capacity to address them. Syria is now in the 5th year of its terrible conflict. Literally millions of people, refugees, exited that country, and a conflict that now, you watch the news every day, seems to be escalating rather than becoming rather than being diffused. Ebola, first index case, a young boy at the end of 2013. WHO recognized that there was a public health emergency by April, but didn't declare one until August of last year. And within that 5 months of paralysis in the international health community, our community allowed an epidemic to take place in 3 West African countries, which has taken those nations back 30, 40 years, and allowed well over 10,000 people, at a minimum, to die unnecessarily. 2 challenges there that pose questions about our ability as communities, as nations, societies, to address these complex predicaments. Now, when you look at those complex predicaments, climate change is important, but it's not the only thing that is threatening us. This is the famous idea of planetary boundaries from Johan Rockström at the Stockholm Resilience Centre. The idea that our species lives in the centre of this circle, a safe operating space for our species, and we're surrounded by some critical threats, which, if we don't address them, and we go into the red zones of danger irreversibly, then that will be a species-threatening episode. And already, when we've got climate change here, we've got ozone depletion, aerosol loading of the atmosphere, acidification of our oceans, changes in phosphorus, nitrogen flows in our ecosystems, freshwater use, land use, and the integrity of the biosphere, you can see that we're already inching way out of that safe operating space. Those are the coordinates, so to speak, of our future. Now, 2 weeks ago, I took this photograph outside of the United Nations as countries came together to sign up to these Sustainable Development Goals. And they are a continuation of the Millennium Development Goals on ending poverty, hunger, ensuring healthy lives, ensuring universal education, and achieving gender equality. But there's so much more than that. What was signed in New York was almost a utopia that we're going to reach by 2030. But it's worth just looking at what the ambition is. And remember, in 20 years, we've taken over 3 billion people out of poverty. So this is possible. We're going to address sustainable water sanitation, energy. We're going to create sustainable economic growth, industrialization, deal with inequality, save our cities, moderate our consumption and production. We're going to solve climate change. By 2030, we're going to create wonderfully sustainable oceans. We're going to create safe ecosystems. And we're going to bring world peace. That's what your Prime Minister, whoever it was at the time, it changed so quickly, it's hard for me to keep up. That's what your Prime Minister signed up to. It's what my Prime Minister signed up to. It's what 194 nation-states signed up to. So we've got to make it work, haven't we? How are we going to make it work? That was the 17th SDG. And the way we're going to do that, it's the most difficult one of all, we're going to strengthen the means of implementation. How do we do that? We have to work together in unprecedented ways. Like we've never worked together before. We have to cooperate with one another. Now these are the objectives of SDG 3 on health, and it's worth just mentioning the changes that are taking place. This is the agenda for the next 15 years. Certainly all the maternal, child, infectious disease goals from the MDGs, but now non-communicable diseases are centre stage. That's the new big epidemic that's affecting middle-income countries like no other moment in history. We have to address those. There are other issues like alcohol and substance abuse, injuries, but I want to come down to here, universal health coverage. The lever for creating this opportunity for sustainable development. At the same time, we're going to address tobacco. Research is central, providing the knowledge that we can achieve these political objectives. We're going to have to spend more on health systems and health professionals, and that's where the college can be a very important voice for advocacy for investment in health professional education. Without high-quality health professionals, you have no health system. You have no future unless you have those individuals who can deliver high-quality health care and also global health security, being able to pick up these threats and risks. Now, what this is telling us is that the way we've approached the threats has been wrong. The way we've approached the threats facing our species has been to think of them as abstract, out there, physical systems. In other words, the problem is carbon dioxide, or it's acidified oceans, or it's the loss of the biosphere, or it's disease, or it's population growth. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Those are not the threats. The threats are within us. The threats are us, not out there, not carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's the way we think about the health of our societies. It's the way we organise our economies. It's the way we organise our politics, our democracy, how we make decisions together, whether we have social stability in our societies, and how we talk to one another. Not shout at one another like I'm shouting at you now, but how we sit down and talk together to solve our problems. That's the key to a sustainable future and a resilient future. So, we come back to medicine and public health in the 21st century. Over a year ago, a couple of years ago now, with colleagues in public health, actually with a couple of colleagues from a country with 2 islands not too far away from here, forgive them, with Robert Beaglehole and Ruth Vanita and others, we wrote a manifesto for something we call planetary health. And there we had this rather high ideal of an urgent transformation in our values and practices based on this idea of our interdependence, every person on the planet depending upon everybody else, and the interconnectedness of the risks we face. And thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation for investing in that idea, we met, and that's a big table in New York, and the man at the very end of that is the chair of the commission, Andy Haynes, and we sat down and we tried to work out that we've had this great success story, this great divergence in the past 250 years, as the film was about to tell you, that it's not only natural systems that are threatening us, but it's human systems that are threatening us, so what can we do about it? And we tried to map out the contours of the world that we are seeing and the direction it's taking. We're seeing this massive growth in population, this great success story in terms of reducing poverty, as a result of which life expectancy is shooting up. And because we're creating this larger population, which has got many more expectations about the future, demands for energy are going up, demands for water are going up, demands for land are going up. The result of which is this environmental degradation. Tropical forest loss is increasing, we're seeing water shortages, these acidified oceans again, all of which is human activity contributing to temperature change, and the catastrophic loss of biodiversity, and the connection we now understand, the science of the connection between biodiversity and human health, and the two are very tightly linked. The human species is just that, one species amongst many millions of species. We are not special in the sense that our fates are somehow divided from the fates of other animal and plant species on our planet. Our fates are tied together. When you look at that map overall of the human footprint on the world, it's a pretty frightening picture. There's a lot of red and not so much yellow on that picture. That's us. That's what we're doing to our planet. We are, as Nick said, beginning to understand the science of the connections. So you look at the human pressure on the global environment, and that human pressure causes changes to our ecosystems. Climate change is absolutely by far and away the number one issue there, but then these other planetary boundaries that I've already talked about here, this is in the report, and those changes, and this is why we are meeting here, this is why this college is leading, and Nick's putting his reputation on the line to do it, is because of the health effects. Direct health effects in terms of floods and heat waves and water shortages, ecosystem-mediated health effects through the interactions of these factors, creating increased risk from infectious disease, agricultural production declines affecting food and therefore nutrition, depletion of natural medicines, effects on mental health, and a big credit to ABC for its leadership on mental health this week, and then indirect, deferred displaced health effects, what may well be the causes of the causes, as Michael Marmot would say, of ill health, effects on livelihood loss, population development, and so on. So the causal chains linking environment to human health are now being very clearly mapped out, and that's why we're here today. Sam Myers from Harvard introduces another dimension to this, because there's also an issue of equity. And when you look at the degradation of ecological systems, which we're seeing, and you look at population health status here, what you see is that we, who are wealthy, are relatively well immunized against this ecological loss. The wealthy continue to get wealthy. Maybe we plateau out a bit as we have the occasional economic crisis, but, you know, you still can get your cappuccino in the morning, you still have your nice house, you can still cycle or drive to work, I hope cycle. And the people in middle-income countries, I was in China last week, are also not doing badly, but those who live in low-income countries, they are the ones who are going to bear the brunt of that. Still, there's still 1 billion people on this planet. So think about the equity dimension. That means we have to ask very fundamental and difficult, very difficult, and this gets us into trouble sometimes, because what is the role of the physician or the health professional in society? It means that we have to ask questions about whether we've organized our societies in the right way to create a sustainable and healthy future for our citizens who we, as health professionals, serve. that forces us to ask questions about our economy. Do we have the right economy? Our traditional economy is based on the idea of making things, using things, and throwing them away. That production and consumption cycle is highly wasteful. Do we need to think about the notion of a circular economy, as is discussed in the Planetary Health Commission report, where we think much more in terms of a restorative economy, where we think about the future as much as we think about the present, the real meaning of sustainability, that idea of intergenerational equity. Here in Sydney, you have a great scholar, Abbas El-Zain. You can't see it because Sydney Education Centre is obscuring his... No, oh, only up there, actually. You can see him here. He's at the School of Civil Engineering at the University of Sydney, and in a paper he wrote for the series on the Arab world we did last year, he said this: "We argue that the current discourse on health population development has largely failed to convey a sense of urgency when the survival of whole communities is at stake." This is what I think is the most important quality of what is being launched today, giving that sense of urgency to the threats that we face. So what is planetary health? Well, as doctors, I was trained, I guess Nick was trained too, to think of health very much on an individual basis. The patient sitting in front of you, taking a history, doing a physical examination, working out the differential diagnosis, and then coming up with a management plan. If you're trained in public health, more like Tony, then you're thinking of that idea in terms of whole populations. But I want to take it to another level, and that is planetary health is the health of our civilization and the state of the natural systems on which it depends. Museums in Sydney, Melbourne, across the country have artifacts from many other civilizations. And what's the message of that? Those civilizations were born, they thrived, and then they died. We're talking about the Commission bringing evidence together so that our civilization isn't going to end up in a museum in Sydney in several hundred years' time. I want to end with another great Australian, Stephen Boylan, who lives in Canberra, and who actually wrote about these issues 50 years ago. And what Stephen did was to look at what he talked of as the biology of civilization. He was a vet. We'll forgive him that. And he studied the relationship between the biosphere and civilization. And in his book here, The Biology of Civilization, he identifies a very interesting paradox about our species, which he puts beautifully like this: while the main threats to humankind today are the consequence of the human aptitude for culture, our only hope for overcoming them lies in this aptitude. And there is the riddle that we have to somehow solve, the puzzle that we have to solve. Now, the chief idea in a puzzle is that the information within that puzzle will give you the answer. And the challenge of solving a puzzle is to discover what that information is. That's our puzzle. We are creating the problem, but we have the ability to solve the problem. And the challenge for the next generation, the challenge that this college is leading worldwide, is to find the solution to that puzzle. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much, Richard. I think we should leave that slide up here, actually, and I'd like to begin with it and take us back to Tony McMichael, who was a fellow of this important college. And Tony once told me that this short book, it's just a couple of 100 pages, he always kept it in his tennis bag, so that when he went to play tennis on the weekend, if his wife Judith was running late, when she came to pick him up, he would just open that little book and read some passages from it. And for me, this is one of the most profound books ever written, and it was published in this city through UNSW Press in 2004. And so I think that every fellow of this college should read that book, and I suggest that every fellow of the college should have it in the tennis bag, or perhaps the golf bag, more likely in this college perhaps. But let me just make a couple of connecting remarks before we open it up to discussion. So, as Richard said, from the UN point of view, the member states all signed off just a couple of weeks ago on this 2030 agenda for sustainable development. 17 new sustainable development goals, 169 targets to replace the MDGs that finished this year. No doubt this is exceptionally ambitious, and the really important thing for people like us in Australia is that all countries need to act on this agenda. It's no longer like the MDGs, which were essentially about change in low and middle income countries. This new agenda is at least as much about change in high income countries. It's about contraction, as Richard said, in consumption in high income countries to enable room for additional development in low and middle income countries to converge outcomes, including improved health outcomes. And indeed, last night, some of you may have seen Richard on the World Programme on ABC 24, and he raised the important existential crisis that this creates, this 2030 agenda for the United Nations, and indeed for all nations. Are we fit for purpose? Is the UN fit for purpose? Is our national government fit for purpose to achieve this transition? And if I speak from the UN point of view, where I'm currently based, it is arguable that the UN is no longer fit for purpose in the context of the 2030 agenda, principally because most UN agencies have no mandate to work with high-income countries. The mandate is to work with low and middle-income countries. So that's going to have to be rethought. So before we open it up, I just wanted to make a couple of final comments about the college and what this all means for physicians. A critical thing is that we need to, as physicians, and including public health physicians, embrace this eco-social understanding of health, an understanding of health that acknowledges the ecological, economic and social foundations of health. And this was the approach that Tony McMichael argued for. We need to bring systems thinking into the way we work, certainly as public health physicians, and this will complement our understanding from classical epidemiology. Subspecialties of physicians need to start thinking about what this means for them. And I recently met an environmental cardiologist from Canada. So have a look on the web and think about what that means if you're a cardiologist. He still wears a stethoscope when he gives his talks, but he's thinking about the environment that people are inhabiting. And finally, a critical question for us as physicians and doctors more generally is, who has the sovereignty of health? Are we as a medical profession the only ones that can define health? Or do we need to open up that definition to enable contributions more widely across societal sectors in the interest of the health of future generations? And I was delighted just a couple, was it a week or two ago, to be in Hobart for the Population Health Congress, where we were hearing about this new act in Wales, in the UK. And of course, we're named after Wales here in New South Wales, and they have a new act that focuses on the health of future generations. And you can't do that unless you think about planetary health and the health of civilizations. So back to our coordinator this morning. Thanks very much, Sophie.
Thank you very much. We'll just get some chairs brought up now for our three speakers. So they were great, very passionate, very informative presentations that were very inspiring, and really I hope that inspire you that, you know, doctors can take action, and we'll hear more this morning about the work that the college is doing to empower doctors to take action. So while we sort out who's sitting where. Thank you. It is, well, I'm here. So I might just start with Richard, and you've touched on some of this in your speech already, but why is climate change such an important issue for you and in your role as Editor-in-Chief of The Lancet?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that a few people... Oh, thanks very much, Nick. It's a question a few people have asked. Climate change doesn't really seem to be a mainstream or core health issue. But let me just very briefly try and explain why I think it is. First of all, and this is almost so trivial it almost shouldn't need to be said, but there's no point in achieving universal health coverage for 7 billion people on the planet, 12 billion by the end of this century, if we don't have a planet to live on. So if you want to talk about, in the Michael Marmot sense, the causes of disease, then I can't think of a bigger or better cause to champion than one that's going to affect our very survival, climate change. So we have a stake in this debate if we're concerned about the long-term health of our populations. Second, and this is Andy Haynes's point that he's made so well, and that's the co-benefits. That if we intervene on climate change, we actually have dividends for health. This isn't about losing something. We're not giving something up if we're going to address climate change. We're actually going to get fitter and healthier. Changes to our diet, our physical activity, our energy use in society, our transport systems in cities. These issues are going to deliver benefits, tangible, measurable benefits in human health. And finally, it's redefining the notion of health, not just individual or population, but civilizational. So I think that's the reason why we're in this.
And how important, just sticking with you, Richard, for a moment, how important is it that individual physicians add their voices to this debate about climate change and that they take action on an individual basis as well as on a college basis like we're seeing today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware, my wife's a paediatrician, so I'm very aware that doctors every day have very busy and tough jobs in just doing their ordinary care. But doctors, and in fact, if I could extend to all health professionals are not only concerned about individual health, they are concerned about societal health too, the conditions that determine the health of the public or patients that they are seeing. And the voice of health professionals is so important as advocates. In our society, where our politicians unfortunately aren't trusted to the extent that we might wish that they were, doctors and scientists are two of the most trusted groups in our society. They are the locus, the repository of enormous amounts of public trust. And what I am urging, and I believe what the college is urging too, is that doctors give a little bit of that public trust to this issue and to lead what is nothing less than a social movement. One example from the early 60s, when the Royal College of Physicians in England published its report on tobacco. That led to massive political change. It lit the blue touch paper for a movement against the tobacco industry. It's a struggle that we're still in, but it's a struggle that has delivered enormous health benefits for many millions, if not billions of people. And that's what can happen when a college of physicians, of health professionals, puts its moral stamp on a particular issue when it's underpinned, and this is so key, by great science, as this is.
We might just stick with the issue of advocacy and move on to Nick briefly. The College of Physicians has shown leadership in kicking off the global campaign, which we've been talking about. Why did you feel that the college was the right organisation to draw global attention to this issue, the health impacts of climate change?
Well, look, I think as physicians, I would argue we are, at least in the medical community, natural leaders of groups within that community, at least potentially. And therefore it appeared to me to be an important platform. I also took inspiration from the RCP smoking campaign from the 60s, quite frankly, because that changed the world. Well, sometimes you need to step up if you want to change things. And to be honest, I wasn't sure anyone else was going to do it. I mean, I didn't see people knocking on the door saying, we're going to make a difference here. In fact, I almost saw the opposite. This is too hard, too big, too difficult. When I spoke to certain colleagues, they said, but that's not me, that's not us, but that's changing. And I think the college is on a journey like the whole community here. The evidence has accumulated. The evidence is now unequivocal. We can't ignore the evidence. We're an evidence-based organisation. We do evidence-based advocacy. And I'm very proud of that advocacy. And we are fighting e-cigarettes and smoking and alcohol and all those other important issues. But this also, you could argue, is perhaps the most important issue, at least right now, because we need to make changes now. We can't wait 10 years, according to the data, as I understand it. Even then it may really put us at much higher risk. So now's the time to do something.
And Nick, what do you think that the global medical community can achieve if they unite in this call to action on the health impacts of climate change?
So let me say, I hope we will unite. There hasn't been a long history, though, of us uniting. Let's think about it. I mean, medical professionals, health professionals are fiercely independent, extremely clever, capable individuals. That means they don't like working together. Period. But I'd also argue in times of crisis, and I think people are starting to understand actually this is now a crisis. This is not an issue, this is a crisis. People do get together. It's a bit like war. When there's a war, people get together, even if they have differences. And I think it's a time for us to do that. Now, I hope others will listen. I've been incredibly impressed. I mean, I did not anticipate we get 50-plus organisations signing up already. I've got to admit, if we had 10, I would have said, fantastic, what a success, aren't we doing well? Obviously there's a lot more to do. But every individual needs to advocate now. I mean, if it's just a few of us, nothing's going to happen, nothing at all.
And before we move on to Tony, I might just get you, Nick, just to talk a bit about what the Day of Global Action will be about on October the 12th.
Well, the Day of Global Action will be an opportunity for individuals and organisations to actually sign up, to tweet, to use other social media I fail to fully understand, and whatever other means are possible to spread the message that, in 50 days, COP21 is on, we need to take action as communities. We're lending our voice to this, and I would argue politicians aren't. Well, people don't always believe politicians. Unfortunately, climate scientists seem to have fallen into that category as well for reasons I don't fully understand. But it's true. But doctors are a different group, and I would argue, and all health professionals actually, I would argue if we lend our voice, that lends real credibility. And it's the time to do it is on October 12th, right? And that's the day. Sign up. Please be engaged. If there's only 2 or 3 of us signed up, it'll be a very disappointing day. Please get everyone you know, every organisation you work with. I'm about to write to every Vice-Chancellor in the country and across the Tasman as well to say get your universities engaged. I'll do that. But you all need to do similar things. Write to your MP. Write to them. They actually have to listen and respond, if you write a letter. And tell them about this. Get them engaged too.
And Tony, I might just ask you the same question. Why do you think it's so important that doctors get involved in this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think when we're thinking about the health of people, mostly as doctors, we are very good at thinking about the health of people currently alive and perhaps people about to be born. But we're not so good at thinking about the health of future generations. And I think that's what makes this critically different, and why colleges like this have to change in the way they think about health now. Because of the Anthropocene, and you'll get to see that video at some stage, I hope, we're changing planetary systems, and that will have feedback impacts on our health. And so you can't be a good physician for the future if you're not thinking now about what's coming over the horizon. And I think that's why it's really important that we're doing it here today. I'd also like to really take this opportunity to thank Nick. I was at one stage the Climate Change and Health Fellow for the college, and sadly that was a rather grubby little episode, unfortunately. You can read about it on Croaky, one of our media sites. But we moved on, and we need to move on. We always need to be rethinking, reforming. and as Nick said, coming together on this really important issue. As Richard said, we're all interdependent, and this is not something that medicine's been good at doing, but we absolutely must do it now.
So anyone can answer this question. You might have a view that the report says that we're mortgaging the health of future generations to recognise economic and development gains in the present, and it says that solutions are within reach, and that's actions like reducing population growth and sustainable patterns of consumption. But how feasible are those goals, and how achievable are those goals in a realistic sense? Maybe Richard.
Thanks very much. I think it's a change in consciousness that we're trying to effect here. This notion, as Tony said earlier, that this is a universal agenda. This really is about all of us. And I think that the way it's perverse. Thomas Nagel, a political philosopher, wrote an essay on global justice years ago, and he concluded that there is no such thing, there won't be any such thing as global justice in the near future, that things will have to get worse before they get better. In other words, we're going to have to understand our interconnectedness as the world tips into greater crises before we realise that we have to do things differently. Now, I think what we're seeing, and it's very important to put this in the right way, but we've just seen in the south of France multiple deaths through extreme weather events. We're seeing across Australia extreme weather events. Now, these are fluctuations that probably would have happened, smaller versions of those fluctuations happened anyway. But what has happened with climate change is that these smaller fluctuations are being amplified, are getting bigger. And as we see these changes across the planet, there is already, I think, we are seeing a change in global consciousness. The notion that we really are not a country of sovereign nation state, a world of sovereign nation states, but actually we're simply one people on one planet, and that we are going to have to ask our political leaders to work differently. So I think that's happening now, and I think through mobilization of civil society forces such as this one, we are going to see a gradual change. This isn't, when Martin Luther King stood up and had a dream, he didn't say he had a 10-point action plan. What he did was he said he had a vision. And he had a vision for a different world. And that is what we have to go out there and say to people. We have to articulate our positive vision, the idea that this is an opportunity. Behind that, we have our 10-point action plan. But we have to go and win hearts and minds of all different political persuasions, of all different attitudes in our society. And I think we're beginning to do that. And today is a very special day because it marks that leadership time zero.
So I might just ask Nick, in the report it says that societies face a clear and potent danger that require urgent and transformative actions to protect the present and future generations. Do you believe that most Australians working in the health area really recognise that fact and how seriously health could be impacted in the future?
Look, I think I think people appreciate there's an issue, but it's in the back of their minds, not the front of their minds. That's my sense of our health system. I think within each individual hospital, within each individual craft group, we're not seeing, well, we haven't seen up to now, voices coming out saying we need to do things, we need to reduce the carbon footprint of our hospital, which could be done, for example. We need to do this across our community. That's not happening. It needs to happen now. And I think our role is to ensure this understanding becomes clearer and indeed advocate along these lines. And I believe if we do it effectively, and I want to congratulate the Lancet and the reports on really allowing us, in a sense, to bring this to the fore, because, bringing it to the medical community is not that easy. They're going to be saying, well, where's the evidence? It's always the same. But now we've actually got a definitive piece of data we can give to people and say, well, here's the evidence as we know it, and you can read it for yourself if you don't believe what we're saying. And some still do not believe. I think that's probably fair to say. And disinformation is remarkably effective, isn't it? I've learned this in all sorts of political realms. It's remarkable how you can get out there and tell things that really aren't quite true, in fact, far from true, and some people will believe it anyway. And that's a sort of misinformation, disinformation we need to change. I think health professionals will get on board if we show the leadership, and I think if we show them ways to act as individuals, as leaders within their own institutions, as leaders within this college, as leaders in other parts of the health community. That'll change things as well. At least I hope so. And I hope our politicians will get on board with us. That would be pretty nice.
Tony, did you have a quick comment on that issue?
Yeah, just perhaps to add that in terms of our college, reaching out and working with other health professionals in this country, and there is the Climate and Health Alliance, founded by Fiona Armstrong, a passionate advocate for these issues, and I know that a number of the fellows of the college are very active in the Climate and Health Alliance, and that does provide another vehicle for us to continue to do this sort of work.
So we have about 15 minutes for questions from the audience here, and then we'll open it up to the interstate colleagues for some questions. So if anyone has a question for our panel, if they would just like to raise their hand, and we have a roving microphone. Here we go. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed. And thank you all. Richard, what's been the response of the colleges in the UK, and in particular around rethinking both medical education and advanced training? I mean, essentially, we have to reframe the way we train from the beginning of the journey right through, essentially, through the Sustainable Development Goals, I suspect, rather than just simply a climate and health focus. What's happening in the UK?
Yeah. Thanks so much for that question. Well, first of all, there's something weird about gastroenterologists, obviously, because it was another gastroenterologist, Ian Gilmore, when he was president of the Royal College of Physicians, who really took up this issue of climate change. So I don't know what it is about you, but you have a sensibility for this issue which I admire greatly. And since Ian took up the issue, now Jane Dacre, who's president of the College of Physicians, and John Ashton, president of the Faculty of Public Health, they've been fantastic actually in embracing this issue. Now the great opportunity with Jane is that she's a real international expert on medical education, so we have to encourage her not only to commit, and I believe she's already signed up, colleges in the UK have signed up to this campaign. We now have to do that work. We haven't really done it yet, to be honest with you, and I think the reason why we haven't done it yet is that I think people have been scrambling so much to decide what are these 17 goals going to be, what's going to be in the agenda for the future. We haven't really sat back and said, so what is sustainability? What does that mean? Because it's not business as usual. It's not the MDGs just carried on for another 15 years. The MDGs, as people have said today, were about a very particular part of the global population. But this is about everybody, and it's about the future as much as the present. It's a completely different philosophy. And that does require a fundamental challenging of every single assumption we have in medicine, public health, and the way we teach medicine and public health to all health professionals. So that's a big agenda, and we have to begin that.
Yes, a question from the back.
Yes, hi, thanks to the panellists. My question is about political objectives, how far and how fast. A friend of mine's a friend of my wife is a provincial governor in rural China, and on his performance contract it says he's got to get rid of 1,000 chimneys every year in his province. Now that seems a reasonably good objective for a provincial governor in China. Everything we will do will have to boil down to political objectives, which will be a fight. Is that enough? Is 1,000 chimneys enough, is my question. And you know, in Sydney, for example, we're committed to reducing air quality. We've got building codes which address sustainability. What are the implications of your report for how far and how fast our politicians should pursue these objectives? Anyone?
I'll say a few words and then perhaps give Richard another moment to collect some thoughts too. But it's not enough. That short answer. There's energy generation is a profoundly important sector, and sustainable energy generation will bring health benefits, this idea of co-benefits. And if we think about Australia, if we transition from coal-fired energy generation in the Latrobe Valley and the Hunter Valley, the people living in those valleys will be healthier because they won't be filtering all of that toxic pollution through their lungs every day and every night. Now, clearly, living in those valleys will still have work to do. They need to have a way of making a living, but a transition to a and complementary policies to enable people to transition in the work they do is a really long journey, and we have to do it as quickly as we can. So it's absolutely got to be transformational, and Australia has in the ground to stay in the ground. There's no doubt about that.
This is a very important question, and the answer to your question from history is that we haven't done a very good job in the medical community or the health community at addressing questions of political feasibility. What we tend to do, and we've certainly done this in issues on social determinants, is we said, here's the evidence, you've done politicians, you should take the evidence and you should deal with it now, that's what it is, do it. It's the right thing to do. In other words, we've rested our case on the intrinsic importance of the evidence. That is not politically feasible. What we have to do is to be much more, and in some ways this is unfortunate that it's like that, but we have to be smart about it. We have to be very instrumentalist about it and work with politicians. Politicians need incentives. They have to get elected. That's the most important thing for them, to win votes. So we have to show that investing in this agenda, investing their time, energy and resources in this agenda has a benefit for them as a political class, whichever party it is, completely apolitical here, but there are political dividends from this. And what this report goes a long way to do, the two reports, the climate change report and planetary health report, go a long way to do is to show that investing in this agenda is going to give you a return on investment. A return on investment not only for human health and well-being, but for economic success, sustainable economic success. And that sustainable economic success will bring security to your country, security in terms of national security and human security and health security for your country. So what I want to do with these reports is to hold out a hand of partnership to politicians and say, within a remarkably short space of time, remember those pictures, 20 years, taking 3 billion people out of poverty, you can do it. Within a remarkably short space of time, we can use this evidence to give you, the politician, a victory, a success story to tell the public. The scientists have got the evidence to help you do what you need to do. I think that's going to work more effectively than simply bashing politicians on the head saying, here's the evidence, do something with it.
No. Yes, we have a question.
Thank you. Richard, now you're speaking so inspiringly, perhaps you'd carry on and talk about the Commission on Global Governance in Health, which seems to be one of the directions that we need to take to.
Thank you. As you can tell, we've got a lot of commissions here. But they do actually stitch together, I think, quite nicely into a patchwork of possibilities. So that commission, which was with the University of Oslo, was asking the question, so we have all of these wonderful ideas, and everybody makes promises, like these governments 2 weeks ago. Are they going to deliver? And the issue there is an issue of accountability. How do we make sure that those people who make promises and commitments really deliver on them? Now, despite what I said last night on ABC World, whatever it was, I am a great believer in multilateralism and the United Nations. It was just late at night and I got carried away. And I really want to support the idea of multilateralism, but our multilateral institutions are heavily constrained. As people in WHO always tell me, Richard, don't be so naive. don't forget that it's America that pays 20% of our salaries. So we can't go out there holding America accountable because they're so important to the organisation. Now it's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whatever it might be. The point is you need independent accountability. You need independent monitoring mechanisms to make sure that promises and commitments are delivered. What the University of Oslo Lancet Commission said was, political determinants of health are really important, and they're under-recognised, and we need to create a multi-stakeholder mechanism, an independent mechanism, so that we can deliver accountability. Monitoring what's happening, creating a participatory democratic discussion around what's happening, and then forcing people to change the trajectory of their actions. So that's the other bit of this equation, accountability. And one of the things, maybe, Nick, this is something to talk about, is not only is this an advocacy campaign, but this allows the college... How long are you president?
Only till May next year.
Don't you get multiple terms over here?
Not in our constitution.
Okay, so we have to pin down your successor to make sure that this agenda continues. Because what the college can do is to say, this is here and now. In 1 year's time, where is the world? Where's Australia? Where's the world? And then a year after that to say, you know, you made this commitment, Prime Minister Turnbull. Now what's happening a year ahead or a year after that? Have you delivered on your commitment? And that's something I think, again, independent monitoring can do.
Any more questions from our audience here? So we might see if we can go into our interstate colleagues and see if there's any... have we got some... Adelaide, there's Adelaide popping up. Okay, we have a question from our Adelaide office, so just bear with us and we'll turn up their audio. Yes, sir?
Yes, I'm the respiratory physician, Hubertus Josman. We have 3,000 fellows in our jurisdiction, but only 3 RSVP'd for this morning. So how can I engage my colleagues a bit more? Have you got a recipe?
Did you hear that question, Nick?
I heard. Yeah. I'm not very good at recipes. My wife would comment on my cooking is rather suboptimal. Look, we're going to try and help you and others who have an interest and passion for this, because we need to get engagement. And through the college, we'll do everything we can to work with all the jurisdictions to generate interest. We're also going to work hard to get some more public exposure on these issues, because that's another way we can ensure our colleagues know what's going on. So we'll obviously communicate through our own channels. We'll be offering ways for people to get engaged, and we'll be working to ensure that this is as public as is possible, because it is a public interest issue in our view as well. So I understand the concern that, look, you know, there's only a few of us here, but I would argue a few people can change the world, and a few people in their own community can make an enormous difference, even just a few. Richard.
Can I add just one additional point here? And I now want to be instrumentalist to support college strategy. I totally see your point, and we have the same challenge in the UK. But the energy amongst younger doctors, younger health professionals, medical students is massive. Now, if you're thinking about the college and the role of the college in the medical health ecosystem in Australia, if you could mobilise young doctors, medical students into the, if you like, the penumbra of the college, you will find a group of people who are massively committed to this agenda. And that will also be fantastic for the college. So bring them into the college. Put the arm of the college around that new generation of health professionals. Bring them in now. Motivate them by your commitment to this issue. And what you will do is you will also not only sustain this issue, but you will sustain the long-term future of your college by having a group of people loyally committed to a socially activist college. There is the demand out there from medical students and young doctors to have institutions that will do this kind of thing. If you're there first, you will win something for the college.
And we have over 6,000 trainees, and I'd like to engage every single one of them in this. And I don't know whether anyone wants to make any comments. We actually have one of our... Yes.
Richard Burr, recent fellow.
Recent fellow.
So, we do have one of the fellows here. Are you happy to say a few words about why you got involved and why you're interested in this issue?
Come to that. Oh, hi. Kat Charles. I'm a very recent fellow of the college. I'm a public health physician. My experience was largely in the UK during my public health training, actually. But this is, and there has been some frustration in Australia in the recent years in coming home. But I totally agree. I think medical students are, and junior doctors are perfect for this role. They're IT savvy, they're good on social media, they're interested in, they obviously have a pretty clear interest in the future, in their future lives and careers, and I would totally agree. I think it's a key group to tap into.
Thank you very much for your insight. So, and thank you for that question from Adelaide. We might look into our other states now to see if there are any other questions from other parts of Australia. We'll just do a quick run through. Okay, yes, so the very enthusiastic member. I'm not quite sure where that is, but in Perth. Okay, yes. So we'll take the lady in the green top from Perth. Linda. Oh yes, Linda, who I quoted from earlier. Linda, what's your question?
Yes, hi, it's Linda Selby from Perth. My question is for Nick, and I just first want to congratulate you and appreciate your leadership on this issue. And it relates to the broader advocacy role of the college, beyond just within the doctor's realm. And because you talked about the importance of doctors providing legitimacy to the issue, but the doctors can also provide legitimacy to the movement. So there's coming up is the People's Climate March at the end of November, which is in the lead up to the COP. And RSCP has a really important opportunity to become a partner in this People's Climate March, and that would provide, would be the first health organisation there, apart from the Medical Students Association, which is also very keen to be involved. So it's a question for you that whether or not the college might consider being involved in advocacy more broadly than just in medicine.
So thank you, and thank you for everyone in Perth for being there so early. I'm incredibly impressed. That's marvellous. So thank you. Look, I'll take that question on notice, because that's something I'd have to discuss and consider. But all I can say is we are going to advocate. We are going to advocate as strongly as we can, because this is an important issue. And we're going to advocate in other health issues too that matter, because they are also important. But this one clearly is a pivotal piece. But in terms of the specifics, let me just take that on notice. But let me say thank you for all members for their advocacy. And let me also say, in terms of leadership in health, I do actually think all health professionals have a role here to play that's critically important, from students to health professionals in all areas, and I hope everyone steps up.
And we had another question from Perth. We may as well stick with Perth. The gentleman at the front, did you have a question? No? It was just waving. Well, thank you for waving, and nice to see you too. So do we have any other interstate questions? Any other? Melbourne? No? You're happy just to listen in? Okay. Look, thank you very much. Did we want to try to play the... Oh, New Zealand. Any questions from New Zealand? Come on, NZ. No questions from New Zealand. Well, thank you for being part of the presentation anyway, New Zealand. Thank you for listening in. Do we have any further questions from the floor before we wrap up this part of the event and move on to our second part of the event? Okay, well, if that's the case, I'd like everyone to thank our panel for their amazing insights. And I'd like to welcome, I'll welcome Nick Talley back to the lectern to launch the Doctors for Climate Action. And just before I sit down, what I've really taken from today's presentation is that Richard's comments about that we're creating the problem, but we also have the solution too, and the ability to find those solutions. So it's been very interesting and great to hear you.
So thanks, Sophie, and thanks to everybody for both being here and also for contributing. It's just marvellous, and I think the comments and questions have been pretty thought-provoking, and I'll certainly take a lot away from this. So I'm very pleased to outline how we plan to amplify the Doctors' Call for Climate Action through our Doctors for Climate Action website. So the college has created a digital platform for which individual doctors and health professionals can add their names to the call for the consensus, or the calls of the consensus statement. The Doctors for Climate Action website highlights that climate change does harm our health, and it encourages all of us, all health professionals, to share facts about the health impact of climate change, including facts about the health impact of food security, extreme weather events, etc. And I very much hope you'll have a look at that. And for example, we all know that the impact of climate change on global temperatures and rainfall will affect the formation and disbursement of air pollution, and this can exacerbate rates of cardiovascular and respiratory disease. And in fact, in 2012, air pollution was estimated to be responsible for up to 7 million deaths worldwide. Now, you might know that, but in fact, most of our colleagues may not. So why don't you go to the website and share this fact with your online community. So on Monday, the 12th of October, which is 50 days before COP21, we will be encouraging everyone, all doctors, all health professionals from around the world to log on to the website and participate in our global online day of action. Don't let Richard and I be the only signatures. Please, please, please. That would be terrible. That really would be terrible, and we will have failed miserably if that's the case. So you can do this, everyone can do this by adding their name to the website and joining the call for real action. And you can tweet your involvement, share a climate change health fact with friends on Facebook, download a campaign poster and stick it everywhere you can think of that's legal. Please do that from the website. Put it in your rooms, put it in your clinic, give it to the CEO of the hospital, whatever you think's appropriate, but do something. And that will make a real difference. So the Doctors for Climate Action website presents a number of geographically specific facts. So the idea is, wherever you live in the world, those facts will hopefully be somewhat attuned to your local environment. And remember, for Australasia, we need to make this relevant to Australia and New Zealand. We can't just talk about the rest of the world, because some of us, not me, but some of us do think that, frankly, the rest of the world's very important, but it won't affect us. We're protected. We're islands. We're a long way from everybody, but we're not. We're really, really close, and it's going to affect us too. So I'm going to ask Richard to launch the RACP Doctors for Action Climate Action website. It's really been a pleasure to have you here, Richard. Your passion, your excitement for this, all you've done for this very important issue is really something I applaud. Thank you very much for that. So, Richard, we'll get you up, and we need to enter your details into the website. And mine too, so we'll be number one, I think. Okay. So I hope you can remember all that. It's tough when you come from the UK and all that jet lag, and they get you on the ABC late line or whatever they put you on last night. And exactly. All of that stuff. So remember, we can't be the only two. Please, please.
Oh God, this is testing my computer skills. Can I spell? Tell me if I spell anything wrong. Select country. Oh God, what's my country? Yeah. Is it England or Great Britain?
It'll be UK, I think.
It'll be UK.
Probably. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, so we'll move down. Yeah, we go. There we are. That's it. We want my postcode as well. Okay. That's all right. Okay, so then I press Tell the world. Great.
Yeah.
Wait till it rejects me. There,
Hey, number one. Well done. Number one. All right, now, Sophie, you're going to help me with this too. This is really difficult. I mean, no one told me this was going to happen today. Here we go. So we have to delete Richard. Presumably not forever. Oh, you're doing it for me. You're very kind. Thank you.
It's still legit.
Still legit, yeah. Anyone? Yeah, I'm happy. I've signed up.
I don't actually know you.
I'll give you the email. Don't worry. Yeah, no, that's all right. It's all right. Oh, he's embarrassing. Richard, this is terrible.
I think we should just on behalf of us all, I think that the leadership that, I mean, you've applauded the leadership that the college has shown, the leadership that the Lancet and also the B&J has shown together have really made this pathway so much easier for the rest of us who've been trying to. So, without a doubt, what you're doing is just making
perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much. I know a few people do think we're mad.
Where's the mad part?
It's just...
So I didn't get rejected either. So there we go. So there's two of us on here. We want everyone to sign up, and you need to let everyone know. I mean, for goodness sake, get out there and tell people to sign up, and get all the groups to sign up around, all your friends, everyone you know. Get them to, use your networks. That's what social media is about and what social revolutions are about. Now, I've never been the biggest fan of social media, I must admit, but I guess that's because it can be interfering in some ways. But in this case, we want to interfere with everybody. We want them to know about this, so please let them know. So today we're giving doctors, health professionals from across the globe a platform to unite and draw on the authority of our profession, our very noble profession, and to say something, to say that climate change harms our health, and now is the time for us, all of us, as well as our leaders, to act. And success will only come through the actions of the many. Thank you very much.